Sure. But we've seen, like, I mean,
Oh,
we've
there are good
seen-
fighters and there are bad.
Well, like, for instance, the old Gracie challenges,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you've only done striking, and you've never done grappling, even though you may know what it's like to grab,
Right.
it does not matter.
Oh, certainly the early days of the UFC, or Gracie, before it was called UFC. Yes.
Yeah.
But also, look how quickly people took that up.
Oh yeah, people were like, "Oh, we need to know how to grab."
Right. Because and it was a physical language. You didn't necessarily need the terms. You needed to just understand the thing.
Yeah.
A lot of them probably, Randy Couture is a fine example. Well, let me go to a college where they do wrestling.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now I know how to box. Now I know how to wrestle. Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
But even in wrestling, there's terms.
There are terms. There are terms, and
It's
there
a
are
language.
there are conditions. It's a language, but you broaden it. At this point, we're talking about two different languages. Talking about the physical language of you with a blade meeting somebody else who does not read Fiore or whatever, and
Sometimes
the touch.
they do, yeah.
Sometimes they do, but it's different.
It's just different. It's a different feeling.
Okay. Here we're talking about the physical language. Again, you guys are not going. We're
Right.
From
Calling
my
out your moves
perspective.
like an old kung fu form.
Tan!
I will defeat you with my finish throw. I will defeat you with Koda Longa. Like
You're not doing that. You're doing the body language thing. You're doing
Yeah.
the dance.
Yes. Yeah.
Versus language.
Right. That's why, I think that's kind of a cool dichotomy. You know what I mean? Because on one hand, knowing the words of things is helpful, and that is one language aspect to the martial arts. But then knowing the physical language is another language aspect to the martial arts.
And I would just say knowing the language, the words, is helpful and detrimental. Right?
Yeah.
Show me times out. Clap. No, that's not it. So I'll give you an example. So I'm working with the two guys going into the ring, right? And Renfrey, one of the guys, he is on Devin's back, and he's that close to a good rear naked choke, but he's up, and I yell English, nothing fancy, sit, and he pushed himself into Devin, so Devin just went, wow. So I tried to use language, simple language that we all understand.
English.
It didn't help.
One word.
If he just sat, he would have. It'd have been right there. Like, fine, I'm done.
Yeah.
So language helps at a certain level. I agree.
Right.
But I don't think it should be foisted on
No.
people because that's not what some people don't want that, and some people may even want it, think they want it, but it is confusing at first. Cloud hands, or Tan, or Bill. I had been talking to a class, and I go, Bill. And they go, no, Bill's it. No, Bill is shooting fingers. I'll let Bill.
Right. We call that Kwansu.
Yeah.
Kwansu. Some people call Kwansu spear hand. It means piercing hand. I mean, yes, spears pierce.
Yeah.
But
We call it the punta.
punta, the point. Yeah.
Point.
The other one is funny is kwando. What do you call this?
A beat.
I call it hammer fist.
Hammer fist.
Yeah.
So the Korean for this kwando means sword fist. Now that matters.
I did say beat.
Because if you think about a beat or a hammer fist, it bounces.
That's why I noticed you fought. I noticed that's why I said beat,
But
not hammer fist.
the deal is you want to cut with the fist. So it is a sword fist. And this is a sword hand. Shuto or sudo is a sword hand.
Yeah.
So knowing the meaning of it might help you use it better.
Yeah.
But it may not. Or I can just tell you, take your hand like this and cut through them.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Knowing the meaning, when you say knowing the meaning, you're actually saying, let me give you the proper translation.
Yeah.
What should be taught, whether you teach the language of your style or not, what should be taught is the result of the proper translation.
Right.
This is Tantal. This is what I want you to do. If I say Tantal, this is what I want you to do. That's what needs to be taught. That's the do part.
Right.
Where you have to know the words. But you have to teach it appropriately. If you're
Yeah,
teaching
yeah.
the wrong thing,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what language you're speaking.
Right.
Yeah.
How many people, we've discussed, how many people can you think of in your lifetime that didn't know what you were just saying?
Most of them.
Yeah.
So their using the language didn't do a darn bit of good.
But
Didn't do good for them,
So that-
and it didn't do good for them teaching it to us.
so that's another part. That's another topic, or another part of the conversation. Knowing and repeating the name is not knowing the language. So, for instance, if I so martial arts is kind of like this too, and I use this analogy for martial arts, but it'll kind of work here. So, Bo, I'm going to teach you a little bit of Italian. Okay. So repeat after me. Ciao.
Ciao.
Piacere.
Piacere.
Okay. So then I'm going to say come stai, and you say bene.
Bene.
See, and I say sì, va bene, va bene. Okay. So let's do it again. Ciao.
Ciao.
Piacere.
Piacere.
Come stai?
Come sta?
You say
shit.
bene.
I don't know what we're talking about.
You say bene.
Bene.
I say sì, va bene. So I'm saying hello, pleasure. How are you? You're saying good. I'm saying yes, very good. Okay, so I say ciao,
Ciao.
piacere.
Piacere.
Come stai?
Bene.
Sì, va bene. Fantastic. So you've learned ciao, piacere, come stai? Bene, sì, va bene. You've learned 6 words
I use
in
3 of them.
Italian, but you've learned 6 words, right?
Yeah.
Italian. Does that mean that you can speak Italian?
No.
Not at all. Okay, so what this does is martial arts tends to be we practice a coordinated conversation. I'm going to be in Donna. I'm going to strike you with a fendente. You're going to beat and you're going to thrust with punta. Yes? We're going to do this over and over again. Just like we just did this conversation over and over again. And you're going to get good at this conversation.
This is one conversation. I'm doing wicked.
We could do 20 of them. We could do 50 of them. We could do 100 of them. Does that mean that you can speak Italian?
No.
No. So the same thing is true for martial arts. And the reason that I bring this up is because we've picked buzzwords, and you've repeated the words. You didn't know what they meant at first, which bothered you.
It bothered that.
Right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times
I knew some, but
You kind of
but
get
like
the context.
I got the context of like, oh shit, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
So martial arts, if we say tansao, that doesn't mean that you're actually imparting the translation or the language.
Yeah.
So in this way, I put forth that if you do not understand the translation, don't use the words because it doesn't actually help you. It makes it more difficult. It means that, and especially if you're trying to practice a classical or historical art, because if I do a form, let's say we do Chinto, or you do Siddham Tao, or you do a play, right? The only way that you can practice that form or that play correctly is to know the translation correctly.
Yeah.
Because that form, that play was given to you with that language.
Yeah.
So unless you understand that language, you can't truly receive that instructional thing. So if I do a form and I'm going to use Kwando, I have to know that it is a sword hand, because then that allows me to understand why I'm going to the next movement. What exactly am I doing?
So if I pick up this in its original language and I understand it as is, and there's no doubt on its interpretation, well, I take that back. There's definitely going to be doubt because there's going to be 8 dudes that be like, you're wrong. But let's say I got this thing down, and I did the research, I did this, and I go teach it to somebody and I don't use any of that. Is it the same?
Meaning you don't use any of the language.
I don't use any of the
It doesn't matter because you understand it, and therefore you can teach it.
But if they understand it now and they can teach it now, but they never learned the language.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
That's supposed to do.
Because the purpose of the language, right? The purpose of the language was to get you to understand it, not to perpetuate the language.
So I just put it in a different language.
Precisely.
Yeah.
As long as it's the same, you're teaching the same exact thing, but you've left that language behind.
Because that's what I was
So
saying.
that language is not important.
Yeah.
If it's only about do, it doesn't matter. Do this, do this, do this. If it's only about do. If it's about something else, wanting to perpetuate the understanding of the culture, understanding certain. Guru Santo, what is this called, uncle?
Right.
If it had a name, it was the uncle's job to tell him the name.
Right. Right.
And if the uncle really wanted to teach him properly and it had a name, it would be to tell him the meaning of the name. But you don't need the name to teach. It goes to what we were saying just a little while ago. There's two languages that we're talking about.
Yep.
The one that you could write down, or the one you go out on the floor and do.
That you could write down, but not requiring to write it the same way.
Yeah. You don't have to write it the same way. So if I say a forward motion screwing action of the arm along the center line.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a lot more verbiage than a ton sound, but if I wrote that down, anybody who's done Wing Chun, whatever they choose to call it, he means that thing.
Yeah.
It's like it's how detailed you get with it too. English is just one of those languages. It's like we gotta keep talking to get our point across. I feel like versus in Japanese, you say like one word and that's a feeling. That word's like a feeling.
Yeah, but it's just
English has
Japanese again, like Asian languages, they live and breathe that language just like us. So they're going to have the same. They argue about terminology too.
But they have words like
we have
seme.
we have
Yeah.
the English language has more words than any other language. So much so, and its ability to combine them, that some more fixed traditional languages, like the Eastern languages, as new technology is developed, have to come to us to say, what is this? Camera. This is camera.
True. Yeah.
So you buy something new and you go flip into the Japanese explanation, you go, camera, lens.
It's true.
Pen.
Yeah.
I was gonna say there's some things just like zanshin and seme that are inherently understood if you speak Japanese really well already.
Maybe,
To a degree.
maybe,
But
but
trying to
their
teach that to
context,
someone.
their context within martial
Yes.
can be different.
Their context in martial trying to teach it is
It can be different.
something
And
that you
Japanese.
can't. I don't think you can teach it with any language because it's a feeling. But they've isolated it to a word.
Yeah, but then you still have to explain it, right?
Yeah.
Like even if you're teaching seme to someone who speaks Japanese, you're still gonna have to explain seme. You still
Explain it. Can you teach it? Can I teach you?
you should be able to.
I mean, yes.
if you are a teacher, you should be able
Yes,
to teach
but
seme.
like I can teach this to you all day long. But if you just come in here and you're just coming here to do and have fun, and I'm trying to teach you to be in the fight and all of this, and you don't care and you don't.
If you don't care, if a person
No, I
doesn't
guess
care, they're not
that's-
going to
yeah.
acquire anything.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
am absolutely certain you could go to a Goon in Hong Kong and find a native-born Cantonese Sifu and a native-born student, and that poor Sifu's going, this is Tom. This is
Yeah.
Tom.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Because you're not listening.
Just because they're Asian doesn't mean they do Asian martial arts better. It's just the way that it is.
Sure.
Just because you're European doesn't mean you do European martial arts better. Just because
They would disagree with you on that though. They would push that subject. They would push that subject with you.
just because you speak English doesn't mean you understand English better.
That's true for sure.
So I think that and languages are constantly changing too. Like you were to go back to Korea 25, 35 years ago, they speak very differently than they do now. They just do. That's just the nature of language. It's the nature of people.
Go back 500 years, pretty much.
Oh, yeah.
language.
Oh yeah, sure.
pretty much, yeah.
But my point is, it's much quicker than that.
Language is dynamic.
Yes.
Language is dynamic, for shizzle, guys. Language is dynamic. It changes. And it's not how well you understand the language that you're being taught with.
Yeah.
It's whether the information is being imparted.
Right. It's up to the teacher.
It's up to the teacher. And in anything physical, dance, martial arts, you name it, anything physical, it requires demonstration and re-demonstration.
Yeah, I think when I was saying like trying to teach someone Zanshin and Seme, it's not difficult for me to teach them that. It's difficult for me to teach them how I apply it, maybe. Like I can teach you forward pressure, but I can't teach you to be aggressive. That is something you have to be.
Yeah, but you
If I
can give them, and this is a teaching thing, not necessarily a language thing. This is a teaching thing. The way that you develop skill in your students is by giving them situations where it is required Give them a situation where if they do not do that thing, the drill fails.
Okay.
Okay, so you have to put them in a position where they have to, especially something like Zanchin or Seme, they have to apply it and discover how they would apply it.
Yeah, because some of I noticed when I have taught it, I was like, you do it so defensively. They won't necessarily, like if I have a handful of friends and students that me and Marshall will refer to as chicken shit. Because they don't do anything, just kind of stand there and wait.
Mm-hmm.
But Marshall is self-admittedly chicken shit. But you won't touch him because you can't, because he has such good seme, he has such good zanchin. But he's not really aggressive.
Mm-hmm. Well, seme does not mean be aggressive.
Yeah, I know that, and that's the thing that I think maybe I've partly failed on, is I was teaching it as, and Zanchin's just awareness, right? Seme is the pressure. There was a while there where I was like, okay, the pressure is pressure. I was like, no, it's more than that. And it took me a while to understand. It's like, it's the point. It's just that being there is pressure, right? I mean, the way what you're looking at, are you looking at them? Are you facing them? Then there's actual physical pressure, and then there's psychological pressure. And there's, I mean, I can go on, but it's just like
Range.
range.
Like
Yes,
keeping the same range.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Tempo, in a way. I feel like that's more of a byproduct of it,
That'd be
but
my part. But
Yeah.
like, so in Tamsudo, we use the term kisei rather than seme. Kisei means what do you call? Not physical pressure, but spatial pressure.
yeah, that
You know what I mean?
I think that's something even I still need to get a grasp on, so I can give it to students that are more.
You'll get better at it.
Yeah.
One question is, so you said you can't get them to have pressure the way you have pressure.
Yeah.
Do you even want to teach that? Because everybody fights differently. And you may be training a student who 2 years later will kick your butt
Oh, that
and will
happens now.
not, and will never use pressure the way you use it.
It's true. Yeah, they hardly use it at all, and they're kicking my ass.
Which goes, I mean, you want to teach it as a thing. You want to teach pressure as a thing. This is the thing, folks, that you need to be exposed to. But to try to make them use a thing the way you use it may not be, one, may not be teachable, period. Two, I would question, should you want to? I do not want to teach my students to do things the way I do them. I want to teach them the system and that they're applying those sticky concepts. that screwing nature is what makes it work. Okay? Now, you can screw your arm a bunch of ways, and there's certain times you screw one way, and there's certain times you screw another. Sometimes I'm screwing around the radius, sometimes I'm screwing around the ulna, sometimes I'm screwing between the two. I give them all that instruction. They have to find the way that works for their body.
Yeah.
Jason is a tall, thin guy.
Yeah.
Hannah's a tiny little thin person. Mark is, he'd just sit down and do it, he'd fall off the end of the mat.
Yeah.
They all have to do it their way, based on, I would call it the science.
Okay.
So I have to give them the science, but I don't want to give them my way. I want to give them the science.
Yeah. You can give them your way after they've done the science.
You will often hear me say, I like to do this.
Yeah.
I do this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is just giving them an insight of I've given you the science, here's a way you can use it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm saying this is how I like to do it.
Right.
I'm not saying I want you to do this.
Yeah. So like my lineage founder says this as well, and it pretty much mirrors what you're saying. You have two aspects of this. One, teach everything.
Yes.
Okay. So that teach all aspects, because as the student progresses, they will naturally figure out which is unique and special about them. Because he says that everybody's face shape is different, everybody's body shape is different, right? So like, give them everything, and then they will naturally discover what is special about them and what is their
What works for them.
natural, whatever. And another thing is he says don't teach things based on your own preferences. because then you will not be able to teach all aspects.
Yeah.
So that's hard. It's hard as a teacher. 100%. That is hard because we want to come in here and we want to do what we like.
Yeah.
That's what makes doing this fun. But we have to be very careful that we don't limit our students. And part of that is language. Not everybody likes to teach language. But
Yeah.
again, you have to teach all the things. Give them some language. Maybe they will become the next translator. Maybe they will go to China. They will go to Italy. They will go to, and they will study deep. They will go and look into the archives and figure out, whatever, right? Then you've got people who have no care about that whatsoever, and they just want to fight. Okay, so you have to teach them all the aspects so that they can, indeed, if they need it, use the technique in a martial capacity.
Yeah.
Right? So that is the hard part about teaching. That's the hard part about curriculum.
Yeah. It's we're in a place of cultivation, and it's all revolved around martial.
Yes.
But it's also like when you get that deep into the journey, it's so much more that becomes life in a way. There's so many analogies we sit and make and have made that are like, well, this applies to martial arts. Well, this would apply to real life perfectly. And I'm just like, oh man, yeah, I need to. Just gave me a lot of ideas. My brain hurts. I'm done.
Well, we've killed Bo's brain. So
I'm out.
do you require? Yeah, purple smoke. Do you require your students to know terminology? Do you require your students to study the language? Do you think it's important for your style? Let me know. Peace.
Folks, if you like what we're doing, smash that like button. Subscribe.
And share it with all your friends.